So just to take a sentence that you said, I usually say that to many mothers. The sun rises from the backside of the sun. So the jokes apart. You spoke about liberty, you spoke about life. Often do you and the rest of the family think alike and politically, socially, traditional values, whatever, how do you differ and how do you deal with it when you differ?
That's a very good question. I think let's talk a little bit about liberty and liberal values, because I think that they're very misunderstood. What is the famous statue in America? Does anybody know? Statue of Liberty, right? America is a sweet land of liberty. So the word liberal actually comes from the word liberty. And liberal or liberty actually means, it's an ideal. It's as I said, the civic, political, and moral freedom for the individual and less control of the state. So it's actually the opposite of leftism. It's also the opposite of rightism. It is the freedom for the individual and limited government or a minimum government. What is the entrepreneur after all? You are all entrepreneurs. An entrepreneur is someone who has the freedom to think and the freedom to innovate and the freedom to use the marketplace to see if an idea works, right? If an idea works, he can test it, she can test it in the marketplace, and that idea catches on and becomes, a successful idea, or that idea doesn't work. But it's the freedom to think. You see, if you don't have the freedom to think, if your mind is going to be closed down, this is not okay, that is okay, this is anti-national, that is not the national, this is patriotic, that is not patriotic, you are this, you are that. If you're going to be boxed into categories, then it's difficult to think and to be a free thinker. And that's really what liberal is about. It's about the freedom to think, to act, and to behave in a way where the individual is sovereign and the individual has freedom. This is Gandhi. Gandhi's freedom is freedom for the individual, and it's the individual who creates the movement, and it's the individual who creates society. Now, the essential for enjoying your freedom is to accept somebody else's freedom, that somebody else's point of view, somebody else's way of thinking. So if you want your freedom, you will have to accept somebody else's point of view. So you can't have that only I will be free, only I will have my point of view and somebody else doesn't have the point of view. What you have to agree on essentially is that you both have a right to exist. Once you agree that you both have a right to exist, if one person is saying you don't have a right to exist, I'm going to finish you off, then there's no dialogue. But if you both agree that you have the right to exist, then you can disagree. In fact, liberalism is about the freedom to disagree. Liberalism is about the freedom to dissent. It's about the freedom to accept disagreement. I've just written an article. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee was a great critic of Nehru, but served in Nehru's cabinet. Indira Gandhi was a great critic of V.D. Savarkar, but sent a condolence letter to V.D. Savarkar's family when he died, calling him a remarkable son of India. So in a time when differences were not so polarized and so sharp, people could agree to disagree, and the art of disagreement without losing friendship is key to liberalism. You can love each other, you can be friends, you can be close without having to agree 100% on everything. There can be love, there can be friendship, there can be companionship, there can be intimacy, but there does not have to be 100% agreement. So in that sense, all of us have to negotiate these differences and these negotiations, but we have to do it on the basis of mutual trust. We have to do it on the basis of mutual respect. If there is no mutual respect, then on one side or the other side, then you can't agree on anything. You know, for example, should a young girl be wearing a short skirt and going out at night, right? This is a debate I have with my daughter all the time. Now, if I want to give my point of view, she has her point of view. We have to be able to reconcile our differences without saying that without saying that you can't speak. I'm going to just, I'm just going to have my way and that's about it. But we each have our point of view. So I think liberalism is about the freedom to disagree. Liberalism is about the freedom to essentially respect the other person's point of view. I disagree with what you say, but I defend unto my death your right to say it. That is Voltaire. So that I think is a basic principle of liberalism.
Do you disagree with the family?
Often, many times. I have huge disagreements with extended members of my family and others. But disagreements, sad to say, in today's times, have become really bitter. Have become bitter and difficult to manage. In earlier times, disagreements were easier and you could argue openly. Now they've become, there's an element of harshness that has crept in. That's sad. That is sad.
The question is, why do you think women are moving out of the workforce, and what is it that we can do as leaders or at home as mothers or mother-in-laws to bring back women into the workforce?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. I think that a lot of it has to do with the fact that women are not finding the workplace welcoming enough, and they're leaving because they don't find the conditions good enough or the conditions conducive enough. Or there is, with the pandemic, the increasing pressure of childcare, of household work, of household burdens. This is falling on women, so they're dropping out. Or, I think, this is my point of view. I think there is a rise of a certain, this is me, the liberal, talking. Ladies wearing sleeveless blouses, please raise your hand. Nobody here is wearing sleeveless blouses. That's very sad. When I was wearing this, I thought, oh God, what am I doing? But
Can I butt in? Yes, you have one.
Oh, is there one?
Yes, please.
Yay!
This was
Sleeveless blouses, unite. We have nothing to lose but our sleeves. But anyway, so, I think that there is a rise of a kind of neoconservatism, which is a little scary. And it's that it's a backlash to women's advancement. As women are advancing and as they are gaining in education and as they're gaining in awareness, they're producing a kind of social backlash from traditionalist forces, often women themselves. We see women wearing jeans, often being, you saw that incident where the woman because she wore jeans, she was actually beaten to death by her own relatives in UP. Women using mobile phones are being targeted. Women, assertive, visible women are increasingly the targets of a lot of neo-traditionalist backlash. I think this is happening in our society, and it's terribly scary. It is. You can see this in young men. It's not necessarily in older men. It's in a lot of younger men who said, particularly in North India, कि मैं मेरी बहन को यहाँ नहीं जाने दूँगा. That it kind of, it's the brothers. There's a kind of resurgence of this macho, traditionalist male role, which is arising, and I see it a lot in the social situations that I cover. I see it a lot in the kind of relationships that people are having. That this kind of neo-traditionalist backlash is deeply regressive for our society. Did anybody see, you've all seen the film Padmavat, right? Padmavati, right. And there was, when the film was released and there was all this controversy, there were a group of women who actually in Chittorgarh took out a procession in favor of sati, that they should actually be, the right to commit sati. And I felt that, but this is actually, you're doing a disservice to yourself. I mean, you're doing a disservice to the female body. Why are you, campaigning for the right for women to voluntarily immolate themselves if their husbands die? Why? Why should your life end if, tragically enough, your husband passes away? But it was women who were putting forward this point of view, and I found that a little, I found that very chilling. Because to me, why should women be at the forefront of campaigning for a practice like sati, even just because it happens to be traditional? So I think this neo-traditionalism, which is sort of part, fueled by Bollywood, part fueled by fantasies about tradition, part fueled by representations of tradition that we can't quite understand. While we need to appreciate our traditions and delve into our traditions, but if we propagate a kind of violent, prejudiced neo-traditionalism and a kind of, what I call faux traditionalism, F-A-U-X, faux traditionalism, then we end up damaging tradition itself, because actually, in fact, the traditional Hindu scriptures are very freeing of women. Kunti and Draupadi and all these figures, these are deeply sort of liberating figures. So, so in that sense, I think there's a cultural, this is my view, there's a cultural shift regarding women happening, which I find very worrying. If you go to the UP countryside now, for example, and I've been recently, you can go for miles and miles and you don't see any women. And I was asking, where are the women? Where are they? And you just don't see them. They're all closeted inside their homes. Either it's a fear that something will happen to them, or some sort of male paranoia. Patriarchy cosets and brutalizes women at the same time. You coset the woman and you oppress the woman at the same time. That's what they do, the so-called Devi syndrome. I don't know if you've read Rabindranath Tagore's book, short story on Devi, on this man who worships his daughter-in-law and keeps her in a cage. He can only worship her if she's in a cage. So I think this culture of deification and oppression at the same time is what is causing this neo-traditionalism. And I think that's what's at work here. That's my point of view. Many women. Many women are enemies of women themselves. Their own selves. And they don't realize it. They don't realize it. I was having this discussion with the women I met in Chittor who were taking out, I think it's time for me to shut up. Anyway, so...
just one more question. Harking back to your earlier discussion with the decline of television media, now the influence of television media is definitely declining. And now you see a rise of digital media where there's a lot of conformance, lot of political correctness when it comes to it. Now the way you all used to take a stance about issues and the atmosphere was quite different to what is happening right now. It's all nicely rounded off. It's very confirming, politically correct. So where do you think we are heading in terms of journalistic values in the age of rise of digital media?
Okay, so this is a big question, but do I have time to answer it?
Yeah, you can
okay. So, so when I joined...
I thought of asking that, and I thought it's another 20-30 minutes we have to talk.
This is another 1 hour now. I think we'll be here till midnight. So, no, but... just to make it very short, I joined journalism in 1991 when we were still making pages on bromide in the Times of India. Those typesetters were there, and we were taking out pages from the bromide machine and all of that. And so that was the era of what I call, slow journalism. right? The news came, it was processed, it went through different levels of editorial verification, and then it was finally put on the page after having gone through many filters of the editorial process. From that, we have come to a news 360 environment, where news is coming at you 24/7 from 360-degree angles. You're getting it on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, your WhatsApp feed, your this feed, your that feed. You're getting it on TV. News as it breaks is now there. We are in real-time news, where there are no filters, there are no checks, there's no time to stand back and ask yourself, what is it that you are putting out before the public? So I think in the process, journalistic values have taken a nosedive. I strongly urge you to switch off television news. Watch Rajdeep maybe at 9 o'clock. But otherwise, switch it off. If you have low blood pressure and you want to raise your blood pressure, maybe you can watch TV news. But otherwise, you know, TV news has become, sadly, an arm of the political class. So whoever is the political class, TV news will go there. So there are three C's, what I call the crisis of co-option, the crisis of commercialism, and the crisis of credibility. Journalists are co-opted, journalists are commercialized, journalists have lost their credibility. So the man who goes around saying the nation wants to know, please switch him off. I mean, what about what the nation, I can't even take his name, but what about what the nation ought to know? What about what the nation ought to know? There's certain things we ought to know. It's not about what we want to know all the time. And so the fact is, television news has become, it's finished actually. It's finished. The business model has broken. Advertising-driven news is finished because it's news for profit. And when there's news for profit, you're chasing TRPs. When you're chasing TRPs, you're putting up things on television which, make no sense. Somebody the other day was, doing hours and hours of some letters between Kangana Ranaut and Hrithik Roshan. What does it matter what they're writing to each other? I mean, who cares? What is this, some letter exchange between two film stars? What is the news value in this? But apparently it's of huge news value. So that is the level of news media today. So I strongly suggest you switch it off. I strongly suggest that, the days of one source news, you open up one newspaper, you open up one TV channel and get all your news, those are gone. Now you have the luxury of lots of different news outlets. You've got your online, you've got social media, you've got the digital media, you've got newspapers, you've got TV channels. So you could, I would say, look at different platforms for news. Don't rely on that one news source anymore. Because, this fast news, this first with the news, this, I'm going to give you the news first. I'm a believer in the slow. Let's take it slow. Let's understand what we're talking about. Let's see if this is of interest to the reader. But that is not the priority at the moment. Digital media, in fact, a lot of digital channels are there who are keeping up journalistic values and who are remaining true to journalistic values. And I would say there are many of those. And I think the hope comes from the fact that it's so incorrigibly diverse. There's so much out there that you can see what is true and what is not true. But in the middle of all this, you've got fake news, which is another, what I call a social evil. I don't know if any of you here have seen the documentary called The Social Dilemma. Yeah, scary. That this is what is, the social media is creating what is called the attention economy. They want your attention. And because they want your attention, they will put up the equivalent of, these car crashes every 5 seconds. So harnessing humanity's darker side. The hate, the resentment, the violence, all of that is supposed to keep you addicted to social media. So you become addicted to it because it's constantly showing you the dark side. And because it's showing you the dark side, it's leading to hate speak, to violence, and imprisoning people in these camps. Because the algorithm is figuring out who you are. And the algorithm is not just figuring out who you are from social media. The algorithm is figuring out who you are every time you swipe your credit card, every time you talk on the phone, every time you log on to something on Google. The algorithm discovers who you are. And having discovered who you are, feeds you that kind of advertising and feeds you that kind of news that imprisons you in your way of thinking. So you can't think, you can't interact with anybody else. Because you're frozen into that way of thinking. This is the subliminal advertising that they do. It's very, very scary. And it's imprisoning society in silos. It's what, Hillary Clinton calls the algorithm-driven rabbit hole. We're all in this rabbit hole. We just go further and further down because the algorithm is trying to figure out what kind of they're looking at you, Ananda. Every time you are swiping your credit card, or every time you are logging onto Facebook, or you are logging onto Twitter, the algorithm is figuring out what kind of a person is Ananda. And then what you see on your Facebook feed or what you see on your Twitter feed is what the algorithm is giving you. Get it? It's not what you're seeing. You are not voluntarily choosing to see it. There's no voluntarism here. You are getting it on your Twitter feed because the algorithm is feeding it to you. And because the algorithm is feeding you these things, you are getting more and more sucked into one way of thinking. And that is imprisoning you in that way of thinking. So it's shaping our minds. And there have been reams and reams of papers written on this. So I think this, social media is deeply, is an enabler in many ways of social division and of hate crimes and of violence in society. So I think the way out is switch off everything. Go to the Kumbh Mela. I think the way out. No, the way out really is there are 10 reasons, 10 things we can do. I've given in my book. First is don't be alone. Form associations and groups. Because if you're alone, you're lonely and helpless. If you're in associations and groups like this, you're empowered. Second is go in for face-to-face communication. Don't keep stay trapped in your social media universe, arguing with strangers all day. People who you'll never meet and you're hectically arguing with them and getting into a lather. Meet real people and do real FaceTime communication because there's no substitute for real physical interaction. And 3, I would say, take seriously the opportunities of citizenship. We need to also be active citizens in whatever we do, whether it's in your local area, whether it's in your group, whether it's in your sphere of work. If we take our citizenship seriously, then we come out of this algorithm-driven, what Hillary Clinton says, algorithm-driven conspiracy theory rabbit hole, which I think perfectly sums it up, because it's like this rabbit hole that you're in. So I think there are things we can do, and I think the main thing we can do is to come out of this trap of the internet into which many of us get dragged into. Real life is the answer. Interaction is the answer. Face-to-face communication is the answer. The old-fashioned values of cultivating friendships and cultivating equations with people and meeting people and forming communities, that is the answer. I think the newfangled tech-driven ways of communicating can be severely constricting.
That's wonderful, wonderful interaction. And yes, liberty should come with lot of responsibilities, isn't it?
Yes. With rules.
With rules.
Liberty has rules.
That's right.
Liberty's foremost rule is to respect the other person's liberty.
Totally. Totally agree with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sagarika, for sharing your inspiring insights on liberal ideologies and motivating all of us. Women power or Nari Shakti is truly about changing mindsets. I now request EC member Simran Chabra to have Ms. Sagarika Ghosh to autograph the flow page. I would now request our senior vice chairperson, Ms. Shubhra Maheshwari, to deliver her vote of thanks.
Good evening, everybody. Journalism can never be silent. That is its greatest virtue and the greatest fault. It must speak and speak immediately with the liberty of thought. It's the force for progressive social change, like a mirror to the world, reflecting the true realities. At this note, I, Shubhra Maheshwari, on behalf of Ficci Ladies Organisation, Hyderabad, express my gratitude to the eminent speaker, Ms. Sagarika, whose progressive insights have enlightened our minds and shown us a liberal path. We thank you for adorning the occasion and sharing your views today. We wish to express our gratitude to the Platinum sponsors Greenco, Gold sponsors Granules India, and branding partner RBC for the continuous support. We thank ITC Kohinoor for their excellent service, and we also take this opportunity to thank the members of press for their stupendous coverage of our events. Through your works, through you, our works, and the wisdom of our speakers reach far and further. I thank our flow members, past chairs, the team of 2122 for their resolute support in making this program a success. Ladies, grasp the inspiration. Be strategically insane. Very importantly, develop hearing deficiency and just manage to flow with the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hearing deficiency, yes.
I would like to invite all the committees for photographs. So we'll start with the core committee.
Here, please.
Just
a second. Okay, can I have a big cheer, please? Pin drop silence. Thank you. Please, please, please. Just a second. Okay, here one more. Thank you.